Y'all ever fear that your government doesn't have your best interests at heart? That your bank is actively conspiring against you? That it's impossible to find a job in your home and you will be forced to move just to live in a world that demands you to work? Well, we finally have an Arknights story that covers exactly that. And it's given to us by our beloved sad cat, Jessica. So let's take a journey to the rundown Midwest of Colombia so we can talk about Come Catastrophes or Wakes of Vultures. 4 years into the game, and we're finally getting some Blacksteel content. Ignore the manga for this point, and I couldn't be happier that it's taken this extremely grounded route. The story of the event is one many can relate to, but at the least you can all agree that the bank's fraud and abuse of the community makes for a rather compelling driving force. So from that alone, you may be able to guess who the villain of this event is. The country of Colombia itself. So what's Arknights' version of America up to this time? Well, they've been having a problem recently. No, they haven't been invaded by Sarkaz. No, they aren't dealing with the consequences of Kristen's actions during Lone Trail. Their problem is poor people, specifically the poor people of Davistown, and their unreasonable demands like please stop giving us loans and then giving us unreasonable repayment plans, and please help us, our mobile city is broken and we can't work. So as you can see, the government very reasonably can't allow such freeloaders to continue to pollute one of their fine cities, and as such has sent Blacksteel in, a private military group, to ensure a peaceful removal of these undesirables. And this is where our sad cat Jessica comes into the story, being sent by the CEO of Blacksteel, Cliff, as part of the initial squad, made up of Franca, Liscombe, Almond, and some NPCs, to make contact with Davistown. The squad's mission is to attempt to get the mobile city's power furnace active and ensure that it is ready for the arrival of Fort Barron, Blacksteel's mobile base. But Jessica has been given an additional task, to return a bullet to one Woodrow. Despite not being given any description of the man, Jessica, while separated from her squad, runs into this very man hunting in the woods around Davistown and forms an unlikely friendship, which leads her into meeting the rest of our main cast from Davistown, the owner of a local diner, Helena, also known as Coal Shot, and the city's demolition expert, Leon. Additionally, Jessica also meets Sylvia and Miles. Sylvia is the only bank worker that actually cares about people, and Miles is another worker from the power station. Through these characters, we get to see into the lives of those hurt by the changing of the times in Davistown. Jessica reunites with Franca and Liscombe, and with the help of Miles and Leon, they attempt to repair the power station. While initially somewhat successful, the furnace is too old and run down, and a catastrophic originium explosion almost occurs, but is prevented by Almond. But now that there is no hope for the repair of the mobile city, the gang must wait for the arrival of Fort Barron to tow the city to a more suitable location so that repairs can be undertaken. While waiting, the desperation of the Davistown situation becomes clear to Franca, Liscombe, and Jessica. With the bank getting Blacksteel to protect it from the undesirables, the gang learn exactly how they treat those in debt to them. Firstly, a knock on the door, then a violent knock on the door, then paying people to attack them before finally forcing them to become a pioneer to work in Colombia's frontier, to free them of their debts, and of course to free the bank of having to deal with such undesirables. And we get to see this play out with Leon. We see his son Benny being assaulted in the street, but Jessica does manage to come to his aid. Leon luckily has some shares in the mine and uses them to pay off his debts. But even that isn't enough, so Jessica has to foot the rest of the bill. But despite paying off his debts, life just isn't easy living in Davistown. And as such, Benny leaves the city regardless in order to find education and hopefully a better life elsewhere. We also learn that his other son, Carl, who had joined Blacksteel, died during the Chernobog crisis, and Jessica herself knew him, and as such, seeing this family destroyed is rather devastating to her. Following a tense 2 weeks, Fort Barron arrives. So things are looking up, yes? No, because just after it arrives, riots break out throughout the city. They are stopped, of course, but not before Leon's house was burnt down. So, good job paying off that debt, man. You're homeless now. Jessica then learns even more of the bank's shady dealings. They have been committing fraud, illegally raising interest rates on residents and forcing them out of Davistown. Also that when the government refurbishes the city, they can get more wealthy investors. And thanks to their partnership with Blacksteel, they can now be a bit more aggressive about it. Jessica, out of options, gives Woodrow the bullet Cliff gave her, hoping that their old friendship could force him to aid Davistown. Unfortunately, during the Colombian Revolutionary War, Woodrow was left out to dry by Cliff and was held in a POW camp for years. So to describe the relationship as strained is putting it mildly. But Woodrow attempts it anyway, failing but making an effort to appeal to Cliff's past idealism. With this failing, Jessica attempts to use her status as the daughter of one of Raytheon's largest shareholders to pay off the town's debt completely. But not even her, with all her riches, could pay off $27 million worth of debt. And so the bank succeeds. The vast majority of Davistown is forced into becoming pioneers. But before they leave, the citizens protest before the bank, with the bank demanding Liscombe's squad open fire on them, which of course our beloved lesbians refuse to do. But cathartic scene of Liscombe and Franca finally telling the bank to fuck itself aside, the people are still forced to leave, with only Helena, Woodrow and Leon remaining, with Miles accepting his fate. But Sylvia has a plan to break into the bank and steal all the money inside. And they do just that. Jessica resigns from Blacksteel, but Franca, Liscombe and Almond give her all the equipment she'll need to pull off the heist. Coldshot, Woodrow and Jessica successfully break into the bank and rob it blind, seeing all the money outspent on gotcha games inside the vault. Of course, Blacksteel has to step in at this point, but Cliff orders Jessica and Woodrow not to be harmed. Jessica and Woodrow act as decoys, taking out Blacksteel operators, while Coldshot escapes with the cash. Leon is setting up explosives to cover her escape, but while doing so, realizes he doesn't want to leave Davistown actually, and blows himself up along with the Phonus, leaving a stunned Jessica watching on, when all she can do is cry for the man because she is unable to help him. Woodrow has also given up on escaping and makes his way to Fort Barron in order to settle his score with Cliff. Woodrow, despite viewing Cliff as a warmonger, understands the pain his old idealistic friend has gone through to become the man he is today. Cliff has been harrowed by war, but understands it's inevitable in this world, so he lives by the motto of, if you wish for peace, prepare for war. In order to build a second Laterano, he shall control the flow of war to ensure it becomes the last resort. And so our two cowboys fire on each other, both taking out the other's hat. Although Woodrow could kill Cliff at this point, he knows that only he has the ability to bear the burden of starting wars in order to end war, and so surrenders to the Blacksteel operators. While all that was going down, Jessica has finally been surrounded by Blacksteel operators, despite eluding them for quite some time. Jessica has been broken and reforged during her time in Davistown. While Franca and Liscombe look upon their crying friend, it's not because she's afraid. She's angry not just at the injustice of the world, but at her own weakness, being unable to help anyone or stop what was happening. Firing all the bullets left in her pistol into the air, she surrenders to Blacksteel. Despite failing to achieve her goals, all the Blacksteel operators have a newfound respect for the girl they'd considered a burden, and Franca and Liscombe are proud of the woman she has become. After all is said and done, the gang succeeded. Coldshot escaped with the cash, with a little help from a Blacksteel operator, Tila. Additionally, Cliff pulled a fast one on the government and the bank managers, buying the mobile city instead of turning it over to the government so that he can have a Blacksteel base in Bolivar ahead of a potential civil war. Cliff and Woodrow also reach relatively good terms before parting ways, having reached some level of understanding between each other. Jessica turns down legal aid from her family, and as such is sent to the frontier to become a pioneer. Despite retiring from Blacksteel, Jessica retains her position. Cliff, as we have learned, isn't a terrible person. He's become jaded, but he still cares for those around him, and as such, he has rejected her resignation, and should she ever wish to reclaim her place of Blacksteel, he is left it available to her. And to round out our event, Jessica and Woodrow set out into the frontier. Jessica cries, looking off into the distance, but is consoled by Woodrow, telling her that all new life starts with tears, and that it's okay to cry. And so that is Come Catastrophe or Wakes of Vultures. It's really good. The driving force of the plight of the people of Davistown is incredibly compelling. Our beloved Sad Cat is also wonderful. She's come a long way since we met her at the beginning of the game, and I appreciate that she wasn't changed from the Sad Cat we know and love. Like, it would have been very easy to turn her from the crying child into the badass adult, but we would have lost what made Jessica Jessica. She still cries, she still cares, but the reason she does is different now. We can see how far she's come, and I'm looking forward to seeing how far she comes in the future. Woodrow and Cliff are fantastic. Their dynamic is definitely a highlight of the event for me. Cliff changing his name from Rupert is a big mood. I too would change my name to something cooler if I was in charge of a mercenary group. I hope one of the two becomes playable. You know, this is a gotcha game, they gotta get their waifu in there, and Tila looks like she's gonna take that spot. Likewise, Jessica and Woodrow are great. He basically fills a grandfather or teacher role for her, and the way their relationship slowly develops is very wholesome, culminating in the two setting off to find a new life together in the frontier. But I have a big issue. Where is Vanilla? Hippogriff, where is she? One of the 4 original members of the Black Steel Operators in Rhodes Island, and she's not in the event. I don't understand. She could have just had a cameo. You could have just put her sprite in and given her no lines. Remember what they took from you, chat. We could have had a vanilla altar. Also, the bankers were only robbed instead of killed. I'm not advocating for killing bankers, but these ones kinda deserved it. Although I did appreciate them holding them at gunpoint while robbing the bank. And that's really it. Those are my thoughts on the event. Very good, very much worth the read, very much worth the Jessica altar. I unfortunately could not pull for her because I am saving for Dagenbrocher. But hopefully, if my pulls on Viviana or Dagenbrocher don't go too well, I will manage to pick her up sometime in the near future. Y'all be good people, and I'll talk to you in the next one.